Welcome to Sabbath Collective, a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through a Hebraic worldview of Scripture and our times. Hey Josh, good to see you. Hey Jim, Shabbat Shalom. So we are in a series that is entitled Emotions of the Revolution. And we've been talking through all the feels that kind of accompany things like justice work. And tonight we're going to focus on love. We have a lot of drama going on outside of these windows tonight. It's about 97 and there's a bad thunderstorm. So hopefully we'll be able to hang with each other till the end of this. So the Hebrew word for love is the word ahav. It's actually the root of my granddaughter's name. And the Hebrew letters, before there were the letters that we know now, there were pictographs. And we see this pictograph, ahav, is aleph, hey, and bet. So this letter here is the letter aleph. And it's actually a ox head. And it means strong or the first. And it oftentimes refers to God being the first. The second letter is hey. And that is a person, that's a picture of a person who's looking through something. And the letter hey means behold or to reveal. And the last letter is the Hebrew pictograph of bet. And thanks, Aaron. And bet is the Hebrew picture of a tent or a home. And this letter means, bet means the home that we live in with our family or even ourselves. It can refer to this human body as a home, bet. And it can also mean our community. So this word is really interesting. Hey, Randall, good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. By placing the hey in the middle of the word, that spells ahav, what it's doing is it's actually splitting up two letters, aleph and bet, which is the Hebrew word for father. And what this word means, ahav, is really interesting. It's love is what is revealed in the Father. So again, this is the meaning of revealed. This is aleph, this is bet, and together they spell the name Ab, which is father. So this word, ahav, means symbolically love, which is revealed in the Father. So whenever you see love or feel love, the Father is revealed. God reveals himself in us, through us, and in and through our homes and our communities through love. Love comes from and reveals Adonai. So what does love look like in a revolution? Hey Glenn, good to see you, honey. Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Neats, love you, honey. So we have another New York and Taiwan with us. Good to see everyone. I recently read an interesting book, and it's actually called Power versus Force. Power versus Force. By the way, this is not what the book cover looks like. So if you're looking for it, don't look at this. Power versus Force. It's by someone named David Hawkins. And he actually defines power as this energy that resides within us, while force is a kind of external projection upon others. So there's a slight nuance there. It's a really interesting book. Force moves people to do something, but it's not necessarily a permanent momentum. It does not create loyalty or vision or passion. And when true power counters force, which is what the book is about, force always crumbles. Of course, we've seen this throughout our recent history and ancient history as well, but with people like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Malala Yousafzai, this is the example of power that confronts force, and power will always persevere. The author of Power versus Force talks about the energy measurements and all of the emotions that we feel. It's interesting because now energies can be measured. And he sort of bookends these energy with the lowest frequencies being shame, and the highest energy frequencies being enlightenment. So the lower energies operate in force. Things like shame and fear and resentment and all that operate in force. The higher ones operate in power. Force is something that is often reckless, it's frenzied, and it's abusive. Almost always, fear is at its foundation. So we see a lot of things happening today through force, right? In fact, the movement that makes our heads explode oftentimes is the movement through force, and fear is at its foundation. Hey, Alexandra, what's happening? Why are we saying, can we get this on the SC page? What is happening? It is, honey. I think it should be on the Sabbath Collective page. Let me know if you guys are having trouble with that for some reason. But we should be on the Sabbath Collective page. So, interesting quote with that. It says, may your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. Nelson Mandela. May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. So I have seen many people, even in doing good work, who have completely lost their own souls because they are living in these lower energies. They have no peace, they have no love, only this kind of chaotic force. And that force can attract people at first because it kind of seems like it's a momentum, but then force always leaves people broken. There's always a tremendous collateral damage in movements that are based in force. That force, again, it can gather people temporarily, but it doesn't often keep them. Power is something different. That's within. It is not just something you do, it's something that you are. Power makes change and considers how that change happens. Power must be grounded in love. Absolutely must be grounded in love. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. I'm going to let you read that again one more time and let that soak in. Oh, I see that, Alexandra. I meant the difference between the force and power. Absolutely. Yep. Read that one more time. Let it sink in, because really, of course, like all Dr. King's words, he really says it in a very concise way. Hey, Evangelina, good to see you, honey. Shabbat Shalom. So, when we think of power and love this way, what is the change we most need and want in the world? And how do we get there, all of us, together? By Yahweh's design, it will be through the power of love, not the force of fear. So we're going to look tonight at 3 loves. And I just want to qualify these 3 loves by saying, even though there's 3 of them, they're actually not split into thirds, okay? You don't do these 3 things evenly. Sometimes it's 60% this one, 30% this one, 10% this one. It kind of is in flux, right? Like all things in rhythm, it's about flow, right? So 3 types of love I want to look at tonight. The first one is love for yourself. And this oftentimes really gets lost in revolution, in the work for justice. And we really just get focused on doing the work and forgetting about loving ourselves. So how do we love ourselves? Well, if you Google this, you'll find a bazillion great articles about it, but I basically want to touch on 2, and they're the 2 that I really hear the most from people, especially in this work that we're all involved in now. The first way we love ourselves is we keep hope alive. Andre talked about this last week. If you didn't see this the Sabbath Collective from last week, please, please, please tune in and watch it. It was amazing. Keep hope alive is loving yourself. Envision a new world and see you in it. And listen, we have to set a time and space to do that and to do it often. Writer Arundhati Roy says another world is not only possible, she's on the way. And on a quiet day, if you listen very carefully, you can hear her breathe. I'll post that quote later on tonight for you. We need to make the space and time to envision, to listen, to sense that new world, to have hope. And the second part of loving ourselves is we need to be intentional about personal transformation. At the heart of this movement, there is a bringing together people that have experienced deep change in themselves. I know I have. Give me a thumbs up if you have too. In this journey that we're seeing in the past couple years, we've experienced deep challenges. I thought of myself as a big anti-racist, and I didn't realize a lot of things, a lot of my belief systems were actually rooted in entitlement. And I had to be challenged in that way. I had to be willing to look at it and explore and change everything that I did and said and the way I related to things. And my default was always, wait, that's not my heart. Well, it's not about my heart. It's about the other's hearts. And so that was a big challenge and wake up for me. So I know all of us, many of us have really experienced this challenge, this inner transformation. And it's a powerful part of revolution. Randall says power without love is reckless and abusive. Yes, absolutely. Without power is sentimental and anemic. Oh yeah, I love this quote, Randall. I almost used this quote. This is a great Dr. King quote too, if you all want to read this, what Randall just posted. Absolutely. Margarita, good to have you with us. Shabbat Shalom. So again, this starts with personal transformation. Then the collective, which when I say the collective, I mean all over the world. The collective joining in this transformation has a power that is just starting to be seen. Now, one person moving in love is powerful. Absolutely. But when that one person who lives in the process of transformation, moving in the power of love, joins with others who are in the same process of transformation, the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. And hey, this is what we're seeing in our time in these days. The global collective is most powerful when it's filled with people who love themselves and are in the journey of personal transformation. The collective power that comes from that is world changing. That's the kingdom of God. Now, love is always with a practice. Both Mahatma Gandhi and Hugo Chavez had rich spiritual practice that included meditation and fasting. Dr. King and Rosa Parks drew on the power of prayer and introspection. All of them made little or no separation between their cultural practice, their spiritual practice, and their movement practice. So don't let anyone tell you you have to divide yourself. It's all in unity. Tending to our internal landscapes, cultivating our own wisdom, and growing in our character is paramount to moving in the power of love. So I'd like for you to share with you in the comments where you are seeing good results with this, where you're seeing disciplines that are really supporting transformation and you're feeling that power of love because you're in this process of loving yourself. We need to be so in touch with ourselves, so connected, so transparent in our trusted communities that we can be aware of any small warning sign And then we can take immediate action for a correction, for a balance. And in fact, I'm seeing all kinds of people practice behaviors that when I see those behaviors, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, do I even know this person? Is this person for real? They're doing things that seem like maybe it was outside of their character, but it's because they lost this process of personal transformation. We cannot lose ourselves in our work. Now, Yeshua showed love for himself. Even though Jesus came to be a sacrifice for others, the sacrifice part where he laid down his life, it was on his terms. He said when, he said now. He disappeared, in fact, when personal danger was inevitable. In other words, when he was threatened by this kind of gang violence because they were challenged by him, he just disappeared. Somehow he made his way past them and got out safe. So he protected himself. He asked his followers for personal prayer support. He said, please pray for me. He let people know his needs. He slept when he was tired. He withdrew from the crowds when he needed to rest and renew. Luke 5:16 says, but Jesus often withdrew to isolated places and prayed. He built community. He cultivated intimate friendship. Even the Messiah practiced self-care. And we see this when we read of his life. Ryan, hey Ryan, good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. So again, how are you seeing this in your life work for you? And what practices do you see that helps in the transformation? The second love that we're going to look at tonight. So first there's love for self. The second love is love for others. Love for others. And this obviously is a powerful love. It's a revolution that does not divide or conquer. Let's listen to this. It's a revolution that does not divide or conquer, but instead, as Taoist strategist Sun Tzu writes in The Art of War, and I'm quoting, keeps everything under the universe whole. Keeps everything under the universe whole. So listen, heated debates are happening in progressive justice spaces all around these issues, okay? We see them everywhere. Everything from our white feminists co-opting Black Lives Matter issues to voting in a broken two-party system, all the things that we're talking about. But while we argue these finer points amongst ourselves, the White House is separating families, decreasing the largest corporations' taxes, fueling fear, denying science while we die, co-signing conspiracy theories, stoking racism, making executive orders by the hundreds to dismantle decades of environmental protection laws, as well as spitting out so many lies a day we can't even keep track of it. Systematically, intentionally moving us into chaos and ultimately dictatorship. Okay, so the danger with the narrowing, the splinter grouping in the justice revolution is that we will not have the unity that comes through love, that the collective needs for its true power. We will not ever use the same language. We will not ever have the same priorities or even the same vision. And that's okay, and there's plenty of time to talk about that. But we must, in this time, find our common ground in love. And we need to stand on that common ground together. And when co-laborers fail or disappoint us, we apply those principles of love in order to move forward. Alexandra, I'm going to read a couple of your, hey, Janet Simpson, good to have you with us. Alexandra says, love for yourself for me is deep, continuous inner work. Absolutely. You can't serve others without first doing the inner work. Co-sign, Alexandra. Randall says, so I can adequately love others, I pause and make time to care of my mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. Good, Randall. So I can be refreshed and refueled to have something to offer in the form of service. Absolutely. So we all kind of know, we intuit that this is extremely important. So Yeshua also is our model for this loving others, loving our co-revolutionary people together. He is our model for this in practice as well, just like he was our model for self-love. He washes the feet of his Talmudim, of his disciples, and he allows them to fail big time. And think of this. The whole purpose of his being, of his sacrifice, was connected, was imparted, was entrusted with just a handful of his followers who would share the message. And wow, did they screw up. Not only did they argue about his purpose, they argued with each other who was the greatest, and at the moment of his death, they seemed to lose all direction. But when he comes to them as the risen Messiah, he loves them back into this revolutionary power. And that love will continue even in all the differences in opinions and priorities of the way. Love for others. So important. Ryan says, you love others so well, you can see that it comes from a power that comes from healthy self-love. Responding to Randall, absolutely, I co-sign that, Brian. Aaron says, how does love for others differ from love from opponents? Hello, here we go. These examples feel the same. Yeah, kind of the same, but with nuances. I'm going to get into that in a little bit, and it's going to be sticky. Evelyn, good to see you, honey. Shabbat Shalom. The last one is love for opponents. Now, my draft for this original teaching, when I was working on this teaching, I had these three loves, and my draft for the original teaching initially had love for enemies, until I heard Valerie Kaur, who is that video that I posted. I posted on the Sabbath Collective page, and I posted in the Sabbath Collective members. I highly suggest you watch her, because wow. And she had three loves as well, coincidentally, and she used love for opponents as opposed to love for enemies, and I really like her phrase so much better. Opponents are people who are working against what you are working for. But the word enemy is way more warlike and adversarial. War language fuels force, but not power. And again, I talked about that at the top of the teaching. If you missed that, you could go back and listen. But force is something externally, and power is something that comes within. This war talk is inciting in people the very thing we are trying to change. Are you with me? There are nuances with opponents and enemies. And opponents aren't as much your enemy, their work is. Let's look at an incredibly wise, practical application of this, and I guarantee you this, all of us are going to be challenged here. It's a really interesting historical North American First Nation belief. So in other words, Native Americans, First Nation people that were here in this country, who this was their country, they had a belief that was seen when the European invaders came and began to colonize this country. It is a very traditional belief system in First Nation people groups relating to a cannibalism or colonialism, and a term for what causes it, and that term is called Wetiko. W-E-T-I-K-O. Wetiko. You can do your own research on this. It's fascinating. Reynold LeConte and Evan Blaum write, and I'm quoting now, Wetiko is an Algonquin word for a cannibalistic spirit that is driven by greed, excess, and selfish consumption. It deludes its host into believing that cannibalizing the life force of others is a logical and morally upright way to live. Wedico short-circuits the individual's ability to see itself as a meshed and interdependent part of a balanced environment and raises the self-serving ego to supremacy. Wedico drives the infected entity to consume far more than it needs in a blind, murderous daze of self-aggrandizement. Wedico can describe both the infection and the body infected. A person can be infected by Wedico, or in cases where the infection is very advanced, they can personify the disease and become a Wedico. This holds true for cultures and systems. All can be described as being Wedico if they routinely manifest these traits. Now again, this really blew my mind when I read this. This is a very interesting way that the First Nation peoples related to colonizing invaders that did atrocious things. They attributed these behaviors of the colonizers to a kind of psycho-spiritual virus that hijacks the host. So the person is infected and not operating as they are designed by the Creator. Now, it doesn't minimize or deny the wrong, but believing that this was a kind of virus, Wedico was a kind of psychospiritual virus that infected these people, and that's how the colonizers were able to do the atrocities, allowed for the natives to not disconnect from the humanity of the people. Is it just me, or wow? So again, this is a really powerful example of a people group that refused to turn into hate, and even had in their belief system a way to see people that did horrible things, but they're still a human being. So we dismantle systems of oppression. We counter lies and character issues that are fueling these things. We speak truth, that we don't let anything that is anti-justice stand, that we have the power to speak to or to change. But we don't allow ourselves to disconnect from the humanity. Yeshua also shows us how to do this. He showed us how to love himself. He showed us how to love his Talmudim, his co-workers, and he shows us how to love our enemies. And we see that in these words from Matthew 5:43 and 44. He says, "You have heard that our fathers were told, love your neighbor and hate your enemy." And that word for enemy, it's the same word in both of these times we see enemy, is the word ektros, and it means a person who is personally opposing, hateful, hostile, and against God, meaning what they are doing is against God's ways. But I tell you, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Okay, these are the challenging words of Yeshua as well. Now, what did he do, and where's the balance of this? He is consistently calling out the corrupt, powerful, religious, and political leaders in an extremely blunt way. He doesn't compromise in any way. Yet, as he is about to get arrested and Peter chops off the ear of the soldier, Yeshua tells the disciple, put away your swords, and he heals the soldier's ear. He's dying on the cross. He's giving his life, and for the very people who are killing him. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. At no point ever does he minimize sin that separates people from God and oppresses humanity. At no time ever does he not speak about it. He speaks about it. He counters it. But all the while, living out of love. Love does not mean there's a compromise of truth. Luke 4:18 and 19 says, the Spirit of Adonai is upon me. And this is from the book of Isaiah. Yeshua is saying about himself. He's reading the scroll. The Spirit of Adonai is upon me because he has anointed me to announce good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the imprisoned and renewed sight for the blind, to release those who have been crushed, to proclaim a year of the favor of Adonai. Now, here's the thing. Everyone is oppressed. And that's who Jesus had a heart for, everyone. Because people that believe lies are oppressed too. Because people who oppress others are oppressed themselves. And he came for them as well. John 13 and 34 says, I am giving you a new command, that you keep on loving each other in the same way that I have loved you. You are also to keep on loving each other. Now that phrase each other is the Greek word allelous, and the root word is allos, which means different. That means you are to love people different than you. The uniqueness of those who follow the Messiah is seen in their love for the one who is different. Now, Yeshua is placing a binding halakha. Halakha is the Hebrew word for how we live out the word, right? How we do this on his followers. In the Tanakh's view of ahav, the word for love, again, this word for love, Yeshua interprets the Father's intention that love must include the one who is not like us. Yeshua is telling his disciples that the Hebrew ahav is to be understood even when those who are not like us are our opponents, just like Yeshua did on the cross. Because love reveals, remember, if you take this out, the two letters for Ab, Father, this is the word, this is the means reveals. Love reveals who God is. Now, to do that, Aaron, I already know your questions because I know you. Hey, Michelle, good to see you, honey. Aaron's, it's the nuance that to love does not necessarily mean. Absolutely, Aaron, you got it. We all got there. Hopefully by the end here, we all got there. It's not necessarily to make people feel comfortable. And Aaron's saying, because that's what he grew up thinking. Yes, that's that Western Christian thing, to love people is to just accept everything and to not make everybody feel uncomfortable. Jesus really made people uncomfortable, really challenged it hardcore. And he did all these little sarcastic words that when we read it in English, we don't even fully get it. He was in their face. But he did it in love, because love reveals the Father, and that's what he came to do. So again, we love ourselves, we love those we work with, and we love our opponents, and we don't become like that which we're trying to change. We're going to close our time together, and again, if you missed the beginning, this lives on this page, so you can go back and watch it. Because there's some interesting parts in the beginning as well. We're going to close this time with the lighting of the Shavuos candles. And traditionally, the mother of the home does this in homes. She lights the candles, which represents the Sabbath light of peace, joy, and unity. And then traditionally, she encircles the candles 3 times, which welcomes in the Sabbath, our time of rest. Blessed are you, Yahweh our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by his commandments, who has given us Yeshua the Messiah, and has sent us to be a light of love in the world. Amen. I love you.